The wind howled across the wide, empty plains of Montana that night, carrying with it the smell of rain and the distant echo of a coyote's cry. The ranch house stood alone at the edge of the world, its lantern flickering like a heartbeat in the darkness. Inside, Jacob Carter rocked his newborn son in weary arms, his eyes red from sleepless nights and unspoken grief. He'd buried his wife just 2 weeks ago under the willow near the barn, the same tree where they'd carved their initials years ago, and since that day, silence had become his closest companion. Then came the knock, sharp, hesitant, and unexpected, 3 soft raps that seemed too fragile for the hour. Jacob's first thought was that he imagined it. But the baby stirred again, crying harder, and he realized it was real. He opened the door, and there she was, soaked to the bone, shivering under the lantern light, a small bundle of belongings in her hands. Her name, she said softly, was Clara. She'd been walking from town, looking for work, and saw the light. Her voice trembled like a whisper carried by the wind, and Jacob, though wary, could see something behind those tired eyes, a sadness that looked far too familiar. For a moment, neither spoke. The storm outside seemed to pause, as if waiting for his answer. Then the baby wailed again, and Jacob stepped aside, motioning her in. The warmth of the firelight painted her face with gold, revealing a bruise fading along her jawline, something she tried to hide by lowering her gaze. "I can clean, cook, care for the little one," she said quietly, clutching her shawl. "I don't ask much, just a roof for a few nights." Jacob studied her, the desperation, the dignity, the way her fingers trembled not from cold but from something deeper. He didn't know what kind of woman knocked for work at midnight, but something in his chest, maybe instinct, maybe loneliness, told him to trust her. He nodded once. "There's stew on the stove. Eat first," he said. She hesitated before sitting near the fire, murmuring a faint, "Thank you." As she ate, Jacob watched the way her eyes darted to the baby, her expression softening each time the infant whimpered. When he placed the child in her arms so he could fix the fire, the baby stopped crying instantly. The quiet that followed was heavy, not empty, but full of something new. A strange peace. Clara hummed a lullaby, her voice trembling but gentle, and for the first time since his wife's death, Jacob's heart didn't feel like a slab of stone. Outside, thunder rolled, but inside, a fragile warmth began to bloom. Hours passed. The rain softened. Jacob offered her the small room near the kitchen, the one his wife had once used for sewing. He almost apologized for it, but she smiled faintly, saying it was more than she'd hoped for. As she disappeared behind the door, he stood by the fire, staring into the flames, wondering who she really was and what road had led her to his doorstep at such an hour. He didn't know that in the small bundle of her belongings, hidden beneath a piece of cloth, was a letter, one she'd never dare to show anyone, not yet. That night, he dreamed for the first time in weeks. He dreamed of laughter, of small feet running across wooden floors, of a woman's voice humming by the window. When he woke before dawn, the smell of coffee filled the air. Clara was already awake, her sleeves rolled up, her hair tied back, the baby resting against her shoulder as she stirred the pot on the stove. The sight startled him, it looked so natural, so heartbreakingly familiar. "You didn't have to," he said, his voice rough. "Couldn't sleep," she replied, not turning. "The storm kept me awake." But Jacob noticed, it wasn't the storm that had kept her up. It was fear, something in her posture, the way she glanced at the window, as if expecting someone to appear from the shadows. Over the next few days, the ranch began to change. The kitchen smelled of bread again. The baby laughed more. The dust on the shelves vanished. And though Jacob said little, he found himself watching her often, the way she moved with quiet grace, the way she sang when she thought no one was listening. There was strength in her gentleness, and a story in her silence. But one evening, as he returned from the barn, he saw her standing at the window, clutching that same folded letter, tears tracing down her cheeks. She didn't notice him watching. She whispered something, a name, maybe, before tucking the letter away. That's when he knew. Clara wasn't just a wanderer looking for work. She was running from something. Or someone. And yet, he couldn't bring himself to ask. Some part of him didn't want to break whatever fragile peace they had built. But peace is a delicate thing, especially on nights when the wind carries whispers. The following evening, a rider appeared at the edge of the ranch road, a tall figure in a dark coat, scanning the horizon. Jacob noticed him from afar, a chill crawling up his spine. When he mentioned it, Clara's face went pale. "Did he have a scar?" she asked, her voice cracking. "I couldn't see," Jacob replied. "You know him," She looked away, her silence answering for her. That night, she sat by the fire long after Jacob went to bed, holding the baby and staring into the flames. She whispered, "I won't let him find me," as if promising herself and the child both. But outside, somewhere in the darkness, a horse snorted, close enough to be heard, far enough to remain unseen. And so the story truly began, a tale not just of love, but of danger, redemption, and two broken souls finding light in each other's shadows. Morning came soft and gold over the Carter Ranch, the sky stretching wide and endless above the rolling fields. Clara stood on the porch, the baby nestled against her shoulder, his tiny fingers curled around the fabric of her dress. The world looked peaceful in that moment, painted in sunrise and silence, but peace, she knew, was fragile. She could feel the shadow of the man she once knew still out there somewhere, maybe watching, maybe waiting. Jacob joined her a moment later, a mug of coffee in his hand, his eyes warm but cautious. He'd seen enough in life to recognize when someone was hiding pain, and Clara wore hers like a second skin. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said quietly, watching the horizon. "Whoever you're running from, he won't touch you here." She looked at him, surprised. "You don't even know my story." "Don't need to," he replied. "Sometimes it's enough to know someone needs a safe place." It was the first time she truly smiled since she'd come. It wasn't a full smile, but it was real, and it did something to him he didn't expect. It made him hope again. As the days turned into weeks, their lives found rhythm. She helped with the cattle, mended fences, and sang lullabies that made even the horses pause near the fence posts. Jacob, once a man of few words, began to speak again, not about the past, but about small things, the weather, the crops, the baby's first laugh. And though neither said it out loud, they were both healing in each other's company. Yet under that healing was something unspoken, an invisible thread that pulled them closer with every passing day. Sometimes their hands brushed while working, and the silence afterward felt louder than thunder. Other times, she'd catch him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression unreadable, part gratitude, part longing, part fear of feeling too much too soon. But one evening, the peace shattered. The baby wouldn't stop crying, the horses were restless, and when Jacob went to check the gate, he found it open. Footprints, boot marks, in the dirt near the fence line. He followed them a few yards before they vanished into the tall grass, and something cold crept into his gut. He went inside and found Clara standing by the window, pale as chalk, the letter clutched in her hand. "He's here, isn't he?" she whispered. Jacob didn't answer, but she knew. "Clara," he said softly, "you need to tell me who he is." She turned away, tears streaming down her face. "His name is Raymond. I used to work for him in town, he owned the saloon. He said he loved me, but it wasn't love. It was control. When I tried to leave, he said he'd find me no matter where I ran." Her voice cracked, trembling with years of fear. "He hurt me, Jacob." She couldn't finish. Jacob stepped closer, his hand hovering over her shoulder but not touching, not yet. "You're safe here," he said again, firmer this time. "I won't let him touch you." That night, Jacob sat by the window with his rifle across his lap. Outside, the wind had shifted, heavy, still, like the world was holding its breath. Around midnight, the sound came, a horse's hoofs, slow and deliberate. Then a voice, smooth and mocking. "Clara," the man called out, "you think I wouldn't find you?" Jacob's hand tightened on the gun. Clara froze in the corner, clutching the baby close, her heart pounding so loud she thought he might hear it. The door creaked as Jacob stood. "Stay here," he said, his voice low. "Don't move." He stepped out onto the porch, the darkness swallowing him whole. Raymond sat astride a black horse, the moonlight glinting off the scar on his cheek. "You must be the widower," he sneered. "She's mine, always was." Jacob's voice was steady, cold. "Not anymore." Raymond laughed, dismounting. "You think you can keep her? You don't know what she's done." "I don't care," Jacob said. "Leave." Raymond's smile vanished, his hand moving toward the revolver at his belt. "Then I'll take her myself." The air cracked, 2 gunshots echoing across the valley. The horses bolted. The silence that followed felt endless. When Clara burst through the door, Jacob was standing still, his hat fallen, smoke curling from the rifle barrel. Raymond lay in the dirt, clutching his shoulder, cursing through the pain. "Next time, I won't miss," Jacob warned. "You ride out of here and don't ever come back." Raymond spat blood, glared once more at Clara, and stumbled onto his horse. Within moments, he was gone into the night. Jacob's knees almost buckled when he turned back to see Clara standing there, tears running freely now. You didn't have to. I did, he interrupted softly. No one should ever live in fear. She walked toward him slowly, her steps unsure, until she was close enough for him to see the trembling in her lips. No one ever stood up for me before, she whispered. You didn't even know me. I know enough, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The firelight flickered behind her, painting her hair in gold, and for the first time, he reached out, brushing away the tear on her cheek. She didn't pull away. The baby stirred between them, and they both looked down, smiling through their exhaustion. Something unspoken passed between them then, not just gratitude, but the beginning of something new, something fragile and pure. Weeks later, the ranch came alive again. Spring brought wildflowers that covered the fields in color, and laughter returned to the house. Clara often caught Jacob humming to the baby, something she'd never imagined he could do. And in quiet moments, she'd watch him from the porch, wondering how a man so broken by loss could still carry so much kindness. One evening, she found the courage to say what she'd held inside. You gave me more than safety, Jacob. You gave me a life again. He looked at her, eyes glistening. And you gave this house a heartbeat again. The sunset burned red and gold behind them, and when she leaned in, he met her halfway. The kiss was soft, not desperate, not rushed, but full of everything they had both been too afraid to feel. As months passed, rumors of the midnight knock faded into whispers across the nearby towns. People spoke of the widowed rancher who smiled again, of the woman who came with the storm and brought calm. No one knew the whole story, and they didn't need to. What mattered was the small family that grew out of loss and courage, out of a moment when kindness answered fear. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Jacob still heard the wind and remembered that first knock, how it had changed everything. And Clara, standing by the window with the baby in her arms, would whisper to him, "See, little one, sometimes miracles don't come with angels. Sometimes, they come as strangers knocking at midnight."